Don Whistler, Volume 2, Chapter 1, 12.9 thousand years ago. Kruk knelt down in deep thought, high above on a mountain of skulls. He rested against his sword and looked out over the whole of earth. His spirit darted to one corner, then sat. His spirit darted to one corner, then the next, at a frantic pace. He searched for any adversary, any cause to champion, but no wrongs were found to be righted. He felt his will to sustain creation fading and flickering out. The tendrils of force, connection, reality faltered. The tendrils of force, connection, reality faltered as the shell of light fell into itself. The multiverse collapsed around him. The singularity hovered at the tip of his outstretched sword known as Vanu, and then Kruk very lightly flicked his wrist. The singularity containing all of creation burst open again. He sat in the light and breathed in its warmth. Page 2. I take that back. That was page 0. This is page 1. In the year of the flood, a young man named Olo trailed behind the older ones in front who led the hunt. 13 years ago to the day he had been born to two regular farmers, and in this hilly and rocky landscape they struggled with broken plows and yaks that stroked out into convulsions. No one would buy the meat in town either. Rumors were toxic, and Olo's family talked of leaving their clan and tribe and nation on the Isle of Z. The land had never belonged to anyone outside of the family, and they had resented the idea of selling it. I don't even care if I kill the stupid beast, Olo thought, but the notion of failure made him defensive. Olo looked up from thought and glanced at his uncle and brothers. They were looking intently at him and signaled with their hands. Olo dropped into a crouch. He looked to where his uncle pointed, past a bend in the stream. In the bottom of the valley he saw it. I wish the old ways weren't so specific, Olo thought. They were required to pursue the first animal that Olo found the tracks of on the hunt, his rite of passage. Page 2. The 7 of them had searched all morning in the cold mist for scat footprints and broken branches. Now Olo glared down over the lip of the hill. His family looked back at him. His friend sidled up to him slowly and said, "Just think of it like this. If you die, you won't have to worry about being hobbled and gathering berries with children." Olo shot him a dirty look. His friend smiled widely and then slapped him on the back. Olo just shook his head. The rhinoceros couldn't see them from this far away. Olo and his pal bent over and slowly made their way to the great beast. The wind was steady and from the south, brisk and cold even in the days of the summer moons. Remember what King Letlo told you. Let it charge at you, dive out of the way, and spear it below the eye and the neck. Olo nodded back at him, then whispered, "I know, we practiced every large game strike our tribe uses. I will be fine. You were lucky. You just had to kill a ram. One spear throw and it was over." They waited behind a bush. It was up to Olo now. Page 3. The rhinoceros turned away from them and picked at a shrub. Its dark coat was oily and glistened in the light of the high sun. Olo was crouched as he crept softly towards his prey. He knew most vital areas on this huge mountain of an animal were shielded by thick skin and fur. When on guard, its agility, speed, and level of danger increased. Even though there were larger animals like mastodons and sloths, or game that might hunt you instead, like a saber-toothed tiger, the woolly rhinoceros was the most formidable foe to face. Old, skilled, tested hunters had trouble evading the wild and erratic stabs of the two horns on its nose. Olo tried not to, but thoughts anyway about the last time he had seen a woolly rhinoceros taken down. It gored 6 people, and 2 died. His mind's eye flashed through images of the ground thundering like an earthquake, and the horn tearing through a wall on a shop made of thatching. His blood sprayed all around the street lined with vendors. He shuddered involuntarily and snapped back into the moment. His uncle, behind him now with the others, still walked with a limp from the beast. Olo's legs began to shake at the knees from a burst of adrenaline. He wobbled and felt sick. Panic hit him. All he wanted now was to run away. Page 4. Olo felt dizzy and stutter-stepped to the side. A loud, surprising crack emanated across the valley. He winced and looked down. A broken stick was underfoot. Oops, he thought. By the time he had looked back up, the rhinoceros had already closed half the distance to him. It charged in a pure rage. Olo felt the ground shake under his feet as the pounding gait grew closer. Olo widened his stance, gripped his hunting spear, and stared at the pacing of its charge. When the huge twisting mass of flesh was a spear length away, from Olo, he jumped to its right. In midair, he aimed at its jugular vein and thrust the shaft with all his momentum and weight. The thick obsidian blade dug into the rhinoceros, but it popped and snapped. The tip of the hand-sized leaf-shaped point broke off. Olo rolled away and quickly jumped back up. Looking at his spear, he cursed. It must have hit the lower ear of the skull, he said out loud. The rhinoceros shook his head, turned, and bellowed as loud as it could while charging at Olo. Olo threw down his spear. He kept his eyes on the beast. Page 5. Olo threw down his spear. He kept his eyes on the beast. It lunged at him, and as he rolled out of the way, Olo reached into the pouch on his belt, and he grabbed a large, smooth stone. He wrapped a leather sling around it and grinned. The stone was special to him. He happened across it, just lying off the side of the road, and a strange symbol that was encased within a circle seemed to be melted into its otherwise spotlessly smooth surface. It was a gray rock. The melted areas looked like clear and white quartz veins that made little rainbows in the hued sparkles all around it, fracturing the light into 1,000 prisms. The pictograph in the circle was innate to Olo. It struck the vibrations inside of him to make the chords that seemed so familiar to the foundation of his being. That was years ago and only a memory. The same feeling, a sweeping, quick wind of anticipation raced through him, gnawing at him. It distracted him as he focused on it. But his body kept moving, and the practiced circular swings of his legs hitting the ground, launching him into a sprint, and the pumping of his arms up and down. He searched for a clear shot. Only a few seconds passed between Olo's evasions. He got up and ran. He didn't look back. He needed he needed the right amount of space to attack. He could feel it shaking the ground behind him. The shaking earth, page 6. The shaking earth made Olo stumble. He heard the huge trampling steps behind him and rolled to the left. He got 2 good swings above his head from the sling and through the stone. The mind of Olo was calm and gentle in that moment, like a long expanse of flat, still morning water on a tranquil lake. He saw a flash of the sigil on the stone sail through his mind. The blessed stone flew from Olo's sling. The pictograph indented into the rock began to glow as it spun in the air. The shot was too close for a sling, but Olo thought it was a better option than his dagger. The stone was halfway to the great beast when Olo felt his center, his spirit linked to the sacred symbol. A heat passed through him, from his toes to his head like an ecstatic shock, a light and dancing, tingling chill. The sigil broke up into fragments within the eye of his mind. The stone melted into balls of lava, compressed but flying apart as it hit the rhinoceros, who gave a short but loud yelp. The projectile snapped through the base of its 2 horns, sizzling, then went through the skull. The rhinoceros tripped over its feet, landing hard on its chin, and rolled over. It slid to his feet, and Olo opened his eyes.